Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. I'd like to welcome everyone to this evening's Katha with Bhai Sukha Singh. Bhai Sukha Singh is a UK-born Sikh scholar who has studied in various sampradas, traditional centers of spiritual learning. He has traveled the world teaching Sikh spirituality through lectures, seminars, and workshops. We are all incredibly grateful and lucky to have Bhai Sahib Ji with us. So please, if you have any questions relevant to today's discussions, ask them in the Q&A panel so that we can address them. And with that, Paji, the floor is all yours.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So just before we begin, as you know, some of you may not know, but the topic for today is based around Bhai Mani Singh Ji's life. So before we begin, all of the attendees and even the panelists, if they want to join in, I want you to now, before we begin, name with authors 3 texts written by 6 scholars before 1900. So I don't want anything post 1900. And that excludes Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji, who is Satguru. So we won't speak of them as a text. Then it excludes Guru Gobind Singh Ji's Bani. So that excludes Dasam Bani, the whole of it. Sarbalo, Khalsa Mein Roop Hai Khas, all that. It excludes Bhai Gurdas. It excludes Bhai Nandalal Ji. And it also excludes Vaho Vaho Gobind Singh, Ape Gur Chela, written by Bhai Gurdas Singh. So I want you, all of you, to write down 3 texts written by Sikhs in the period before 1900. Now this can be all the way from 1500-ish, all the way to 1700, but excluding Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji, the Bani of Guru Gobind Singh Ji, Bhai Gurdas Ji, Bhai Gurdas Singh, and Apne Bhai Nandalal Ji. I just want you to write down three texts with authors. You don't have to put them in the chat, but write them down on a piece of paper and keep them till the end of today's session. So I'll give you a few seconds to do that first, and let's give that. I'll give you 30 seconds starting now to do that. Let's not use Google, please, or start searching things on your iPhones or smartphones or whatever. So pehli gal wo nahi karna hai, cheating nahi karni, sache suche hoke. You have 10 seconds left. I've given you a little bit over 30. Okay, so that's over. I want you to keep hold of that piece of paper, and we'll look at that piece of paper again at the end of the talk. I say talk, we're going to have time for questions at the end of this. I'm going to try and keep my speaking to a minimal. But just before we begin, we're going to read a Shabad from Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji in order to begin, bring our mind to the topic of today, and begin with asking Satguru Ji to help us all focus today. So I'm going to bring the Shabad up on the screen. I'll read it, sing it, and you can all follow along. The meanings will be there as well. Most of you who've heard my Katha before will know this Shabad, so it'll be no surprise to you. I will read this Shabad, and you can follow along after me. Satnam Sri Vaheguru Ji, Puj Balbir Brahma Sukh Sagar, Garat Parat Gahale Ho Anguriya, Garat Parat Gahale Ho Anguriya, Sravanana Surat Nain Sundar Nahi. Sravanana Surat Nain Sundar Nahi. Arat Dwar Ratat Pinguriya. Arat Dwar Ratat Pinguriya. Dinanath Anath Karna Main. Dinanath Anath Karna Main. Sajan Meet Pita Mehtariya. Sajan Meet Pita Mehtariya. Charan Kaval Hirday Gahnanak. Charan Kaval Hirday Gahnanak. Paisagar Sant Par Utariya. Paisagar Sant Par Utariya. Okay, Satsang Ji, so with Guru Sahib Ji's grace, we've sang that Shabad together. Now I want to sort of come on to what the topic is for today. So I've mentioned Bhai Mani Singh Ji a little bit. Just another fact, whilst we're talking about Bhai Sahib Ji now, tomorrow is actually Bhai Mani Singh Ji's birthday. So in 1644, according to the Gregorian calendar CE, Bhai Mani Singh Ji was born. So with that in mind, I'm going to bring up a PowerPoint. Some of you who've heard my Katha before may have heard me go through this talk before, but hopefully for those of you who haven't, this will be something new for you. So I'm just going to bring up that PowerPoint, and then I'll share the screen so you can see it. Right. Okay, so usually when Sangat is in front of me, I can ask questions and they can reply. It's a little bit different in a webinar series. But what you should see in front of you is a series of questions. How can I escape the fear of death? What are the stages of bhakti? How can I dwell in Guru Sahib Ji's charan? How do I escape the fire of anger, greed, etc.? How should I do Simran, or how can I do Simran? And how can I recognize a saint? So what I'd like you to do is, again, this is, I'll give you a minute or so. Wherever you're sitting, whatever you're doing, on a piece of paper, again, I'm quite a paperish type of person. Most of you will probably be doing this on your notes in your phones or whatever, right? But I'm from another time period, it seems like sometimes today. I feel quite ancient at times. So if you like pen and paper, mere varge pen ਇੱਥੇ ਪਿਆ ਆ ਪੇਪਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਪੇਪਰ ਕੋਈ ਨਾ ਕੋਈ ਮੈਂ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਰੱਖਿਆ ਹੁੰਦਾ. So if you like me, you have pen and paper ready, please take your pens and paper. If I asked you, where can I get the answers to these questions? What would be your response? I don't want your response to be generic, Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji. If you are going to say Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji, I want references. So where particularly would you go? If I said I wanted the answers to all of these questions in one place, where would you go to? I don't want you to write it down in the Q&A thing or the chat. I just want you to write it down or maybe make a note of it here in your head and think of where you would go to. And we'll give that, I'll give that a minute for you to do that. I mean, I know a minute's a long time, but I'll be speaking through it. It started, by the way, the minute has. So I want you to look at these questions and in the notes of your phone or on a piece of paper or in your mind, just go through where you would go to. I want one source that answers all of these questions. And if you're going to give Guru Granth Sahib Ji, I want specific banis and specific references. I don't just want a generic answer. Or, you know, if you say Sri Dasamganth Sahib Ji, I want specific answers. Where would you go to? So you have 15 seconds left. Tick, 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 tick. Hanji. So we've finished. Right. So my question was to all of you, and this is where I'd love to be able to see you, but obviously, you know, that's not possible today. I'd like to see your responses and be able to ask you questions. But so I understand the restraints of the medium we're using. Many of you will have given many answers, and some of you who have already heard some of my talks may know what my answer to this question is. So all of these questions, now these questions are the foundation questions of life, right? The fear of death is not just felt by a Sikh. The fear of death is felt by an atheist, by someone who's agnostic, whatever faith you subscribe to or faith you believe in. There, you know, there's this question of faith of death, fear of death. Then you have bhakti, devotional worship, which is a part of many faith traditions. You know, the fire of anger is something we all feel. Greed is something we all feel. And then you have things which are more specific, such as Guru Sahib Ji's Charan, the methods of doing Simran or the way of doing Simran, how to recognize saints, what are saintly qualities. So my answer to all of these questions would be, the next slide comes up hopefully, a book which one of you has mentioned, I think already in the Q&A part. Someone mentioned it at some point, Sikhandi Bhagtan. So if you've never heard of Sikhandi Bhagtan before, you are going to hear about it today. So Sikhandi Bhagtan is this text here. I have another 3 copies of it lying around somewhere here in the library, but this is the main copy edited by Bhai Veer Singh Ji, which you can see I've got all my sticky notes in, which I'll be referencing today. So what is Sikhandi Bhagtan? As you know, the word mala means rosary, Bhagta means devotees, Sikh is disciples. So a mala, a rosary of disciples. And just before we begin this, connecting this to Bhai Mani Singh Ji and how this connects to Bhai Mani Singh Ji, we'll go through that in the next few slides. So Sikhandi Bhagtan, this text, I just want to bring back that slide before this. All of those questions which you see up on the screen in front of you now, all of them are referenced within this one text. And they're just a few questions. There are many, many more questions and answers and deep, meaningful discussions which are in this text. And so if you've never heard of this text, you should ask yourself the question, why have I not heard of it? This is Sikh Heritage Month, right? In Canada, or you're celebrating Sikh Heritage Month. So this is Sikh heritage. Why have I not heard of this? And you may have heard of the stories from this text, but you may not know where they're from. That's another thing as well. So just before I begin talking about Bhai Mani Singh Ji, before I begin talking about this text, one question I would like you to ask yourself is, if I haven't heard of this text, why not? Why isn't it spoken about in our gurdwaras? Why isn't it spoken about in Katha, in the sermons which we hear in the gurdwaras? Why isn't it spoken about in our circles? And that's a question you need to ask Sangat Ji. You as a Sangat are the power that can raise the discussions in our gurdwaras. You can raise the level of literary awareness and heritage in our gurdwara sahibs. So if we haven't heard about this text, maybe at some point we have a little bit of responsibility for that as well. So I don't want to dwell on that too much, but let's go to Bhai Mani Singh Ji, then I'll come back to Sikhandi Bhagtmala and join it to Bhai Sahib Ji's life. So you can see there's an artist impression on one side of Bhai Mani Singh Ji, and the artist who drew that picture of Bhai Mani Singh Ji is actually based in Canada, very gifted artist. And on the other side, you see a Puratan, a traditional painting of Guru Har Rai Sahib Ji, where Guru Sahib Ji is holding flowers in their hands. Those of you who know about Guru Har Rai Sahib Ji's life will realize why there is that reference to the flowers, but I'm not going to go into that today. So our history says that Bhai Mani Singh Ji was brought by his father when he was 13 years old into the Sharan, into the presence of Guru Har Rai Sahib Ji. And Guru Har Rai Sahib Ji asks Bhai Mani Singh Ji's father, whose name was Bhai Mai Das, what is the name of your son? And Bhai Mai Das Ji says, my son's name is Maniya or Maniram. So Mani means a precious stone. So Guru Har Rai Sahib Ji looks at Bhai Mani Singh Ji, whose name at that point is Maniram or Bhai Maniya Ji, and Guru Sahib Ji says, Maniya e guniya beech jag sare. Those of you who can't read Gurmukhi, that's not a problem, I'll translate. Maniya, this precious stone, your son, this guniya, guniya means virtuous. Beech jag sare means, beech means within, jag sare means the entire world. Your son will be so virtuous, will have so many qualities that your son will be known throughout the world. So at the age of 13, and I just want to mention this, that Bhai Mani Singh Ji is the third son of Bhai Mai Das. Bhai Mai Das Ji's first son is Bhai Dayala Ji. And those of you who know Sikh history will know that Bhai Dayala Ji was boiled alive in front of the eyes of Sri Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib Ji, whose 400th Gurpurab we're going to celebrate in the next coming weeks. So Bhai Dayala Ji is a brother of Bhai Mani Singh Ji. The first born son of Mai Das Ji is Bhai Dayala Ji. But that's another topic. Just this initial meeting with Guru Har Rai Sahib Ji, Guru Har Rai Sahib Ji already tells Mai Das of the future of Bhai Mani Singh, how great Mani Singh will be. Okay, so here, this is a bit of a factual type of slide. So you have Bhai Ballu Ji, who was the grandfather of Bhai Mani Singh Ji, died fighting in the first battle of the Sikh nation, you could say, which was the Battle of Amritsar Sahib, fought by Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji. And in this battle, Bhai Ballu Ji gave his life. So you have Mani Singh Ji's grandfather is a Shaheed. Then you have the second point here, as I've made before, that Bhai Dayala Ji is a brother of Bhai Mani Singh Ji. So Bhai Mani Singh Ji are 12 brothers, including Bhai Mani Singh. 11 of those brothers give their lives for the Sikh Panth. 11 of the 12. Only one dies a natural death. Bhai Mani Singh Ji has 10 sons. Now those sons include Bhai Bachittar Singh, who fought against the elephant in the Battle of Anandpur Sahib. They include Bhai Uday Singh Ji, who decapitated Kesari Chand, one of the hill chiefs who had vowed to kill Guru Gobind Singh Ji. Kesari Chand was decapitated by Uday Singh Ji. And 5 sons of Bhai Mani Singh Ji died on the way when Guru Sahib Ji, Guru Gobind Singh Ji leaves Anandpur Sahib in 1704. In the ensuing battles, 5 of Bhai Mani Singh Ji's sons die, including Ajab Singh, Ajab Singh, Bachittar Singh, Uday Singh, etc., etc. All in all, Bhai Sahib has 10 sons, 7 of which give their lives for the Guru. I'm really sorry if this is a lot of information, but that's why the slides are there. And I'd be happy to send this PowerPoint presentation to the SHMO team. I think I got the abbreviation right there. So I'm happy for them to distribute this. So 10 grandsons of Bhai Mani Singh Ji are also Shaheed. So when you hear of Banda Bahadur and the Battle of Chappadchiri, which was fought against Sarhand, where the younger sons of Guru Gobind Singh Ji, the Sahibzade, were bricked alive and were killed, or shaheed, as we say in our terminology. One of Bhai Mani Singh Ji's grandsons died in that battle. So Bhai Bachittar Singh Ji's son actually died in that battle. Okay, so you have a family whose whole lives are dedicated to Sikhi. And so this is why Bhai Mani Singh Ji is this glowing example of Sikhi. Then you have Bhai Mani Singh Ji's father-in-law. So Bhai Mani Singh Ji's wife, her name was Bibi Sito Bai. And Bibi Sito Bai Ji's father is Lakhi Shah Vanjara. And Lakhi Shah Vanjara is that person who cremated the body of the 9th Guru. So Sri Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib Ji's body, the head was taken to Anandpur Sahib by Bhai Jeta Ji, and the body of the Guru was cremated by Lakhi Shah Ji Vanjara, who was the father-in-law of Bhai Mani Singh Ji. So this family, their blood has drenched pages of Sikh history. And you can do the mathematics. People do many different calculations about how much of Bhai Mani Singh Ji's family died, but nearly, over 24 members of that family. I'm saying over because it is over 24. Over 24 members of that family die for the Panth. Easily over 24, maybe going into more. I'm not going to go into counting up the Shahidiyan, but various accounts of Bhai Mani Singh Ji's family and how they give their lives. So this next page, which I have in front of me, is from a book called Shaheed Bilas Bhai Mani Singh Ji. And it's written by a man called Kavi Seva Singh. Now, Kavi Seva Singh was descended from one of the Pats, Pat Pikhaji, whose Bani, whose scriptures are contained in Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji. Pat Pikhaji's descendant is Kavi Seva Singh, who wrote this piece of poetry, which you see upon your screens in front of you. And this is from a book called Shaheed Bilas Bhai Mani Singh Ji. Up to this date, the most detailed version of Bhai Mani Singh Ji's life is this book. And this was written in Maharaja Ranjit Singh's period. So along the time of Maharaja Ranjit Singh is this book. Many of you are probably writing it down now into that list of 3 things which is earlier than 1900. Please don't do that. that wasn't the idea. So if you had really included that, that would be great. But if you haven't, then don't quickly scribble in Shaheed Bilas Bhai Seva Singh. So Bhai Seva Singh gives a beautiful account of Bhai Sahib Ji's life. And this bit sort of sums up Bhai Sahib Ji's life really well. So I'm going to read this poem to you, and then we'll go through the meanings. Or actually, I'll go through the meanings first, then I'll read it out as it's meant to be read in poetry. So, Seva si karant te rahant gura pasada. Bhai Mani Singh Ji stays with Guru Gobind Singh Ji. So, Bhai Mani Singh Ji is there when Guru Har Krishan Sahib goes to Delhi. So, when Guru Har Krishan Sahib goes to Delhi, according to Gyani Garja Singh, who spent 30 years of his life researching Bhai Mani Singh, again, another name that you've probably never heard of, but someone who gave his whole life to the Panth, Gyani Garja Singh, one of the greatest historians of the past 100 years. Doesn't go into the previous to 1900, by the way. So don't quickly write in Garja Singh. But I'm not talking about Bhota Singh, Garja Singh as well. I want to clear that up. Gyani Garja Singh spent 30 years of his life researching Bhai Mani Singh Ji's life. And he writes that the Guru was present in Delhi when Guru Har Krishan Sahib goes to Delhi. And in the times of Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib, Bhai Mani Singh Ji has a prominent position in the Guru's court. In the court of Guru Gobind Singh Ji, Bhai Mani Singh Ji is in charge of the scribes. There are 4 scribes who are Guru Gobind Singh Ji's personal, you could say, attendants, so PAs, like personal scribes. Then you have 36 other scribes that the Guru has. And Bhai Mani Singh Ji was in charge of all of those. Alongside this, Bhai Mani Singh Ji started writing saroops, which is the word we use in Punjabi for editions of Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji, started writing them in Anandpur Sahib. And you can find there are recensions of Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji which were written in the Anandpur time, which have the signatures of Guru Gobind Singh Ji, which were written and prepared by Bhai Mani Singh Ji whilst living in Anandpur Sahib. So this talks about, this kabit, this poem talks about how Bhai Mani Singh Ji would prepare pothiyan, would prepare religious scriptures, including Guru Granth Sahib Ji, in the time of Guru Gobind Singh Ji in Anandpur Sahib. Bhai Sahib Ji would teach the other Sikhs. They would tell stories, and Kavi Seva Singh writes that Bhai Mani Singh Ji started doing Katha, started giving sermons about Sikh scriptures in the time of Guru Gobind Singh Ji in Sri Anandpur Sahib. And also another part of Bhai Mani Singh Ji's life, which we usually skip over, is that Bhai Mani Singh Ji used to fight in the battles of Guru Gobind Singh Ji. So Bhai Mani Singh Ji was not just a scribe or a saint or a scholar. Bhai Mani Singh Ji was also a warrior. So I'm going to read this kabit to you, and then we'll move on. Seva si karant te rahant gura paas sada lekh lekh bani kare pothiyan tiyar eh. Padda padhanda te ginanda nahi aap tai man neeva mati uchi eho dil thar eh. ਹਠੀ ਤਾਪੀ ਪੂਰਾ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਸਿਦਕ ਦਾ ਪੁਤਲਾ ਸੀ ਸਾਖੀਆਂ ਸਿਦਕ ਦੀਆਂ ਕਰਦਾ ਉਚਾਰ ਇਹ ਸੇਵਾ ਹਰੀ ਐਵੇਂ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਬੀਤ ਗਏ ਬਰਕ ਕਈ ਜੁੱਧ ਦੇ ਕਰਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੱਡਾ ਹੁਸ਼ਿਆਰ ਇਹ. So I'm very conscious of the time, so I'm going to just run through and not go too much more into this. There are various other accounts from Bhai Mani Singh Ji's life we can look into. Kavi Seva Singh writes that Bhai Mani Singh Ji was sent by Guru Gobind Singh Ji to become the head Granthi, or the head custodian of Sri Darbar Sahib. So Maharaj actually sent Bhai Mani Singh Ji to Sri Darbar Sahib in Amritsar Sahib in order to establish the Maryada in Darbar Sahib. And a lot of the Maryada, a lot of the daily goings on, the spiritual rituals which take place inside Harimandir Sahib today actually were finalized and were brought in by Bhai Mani Singh Ji. So another main part of Bhai Mani Singh Ji's life, which I know that we haven't got much time and I'm going through a lot. Another part of Bhai Mani Singh Ji's life is that Bhai Mani Singh Ji was the scribe when Guru Gobind Singh Ji dictated the whole of Guru Granth Sahib Ji at a place called Damdama Sahib, which is known as Guru Ki Kanshi, or the Guru's university, or the Guru's place of wisdom. So here you can see a picture of Bhai Mani Singh Ji. This is actually from a translation of Guru Granth Sahib Ji in Punjabi, written by a man called Gyani Bishan Singh Ji. And so what would happen was at Damdama Sahib, Guru Gobind Singh Ji would recite Gurbani in the morning. Bhai Mani Singh Ji would write it. And in the evening, Guru Gobind Singh Ji would then perform Katha, would explain that Gurbani themselves. So Bhai Mani Singh Ji listened to Guru Gobind Singh Ji's Katha with their own ears. And what Bhai Mani Singh Ji listened to, Bhai Mani Singh Ji then taught other Sikhs. And that created a tradition in the Panth which is known as the Gyaniya di Samprada. Samprada means tradition, very loosely translating it, and Gyani we can say of scholars. So to this day, we have Gyaniya di Samprada, which is passing on that knowledge which Bhai Mani Singh Ji passed on to Sikhs in his time. And out of that Gyaniya di Samprada, you get scholars like Bhai Veer Singh Ji, Dr. Bhai Veer Singh, who you may have heard of. Bhai Veer Singh Ji was part of the Gyaniya di Samprada. Dr. Charan Singh. Bhai Veer Singh Ji's father, Gyani Hazara Singh, Bhai Veer Singh Ji's grandfather, Kavi Santokh Singh, who wrote Suraj Prakash, Bhai Sant Singh, who instructed Maharaja Ranjit Singh to place the gold leaf upon Darbar Sahib. These are all from the Gyaniyan di Sampradaya. Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji Khalsa, also from the Gyaniyan di Sampradaya. And it carries on to this day. I don't want to go more into that. I'm very conscious of the time. Again, just bringing this type of topic to a closure. Remember when Bhai Mani Singh Ji, in the times of Bhai Mani Singh Ji, this was a time when the Sikhs were being hunted down. This was the time when Sikhs were living in the jungles. But they would still come to Bhai Mani Singh Ji and they would ask Bhai Mani Singh Ji to perform Katha. And there's one book called Gurbilas Patshay Shemi written by a man called Kavi Son. And Kavi Son says that Bhai Mani Singh Ji went to a village called Chang. And when Bhai Mani Singh Ji went to that village, Bhai Mani Singh Ji stayed there for 1 month and he performed Katha. He told the life story of the 6th Guru, Guru Har Gobind Sahib. And Kavi Son Ji says that Bhai Mani Singh Ji's account was so detailed that he based a whole book upon Bhai Mani Singh Ji's Katha. And just to give you some context, I'm going to show you the thickness of this book. So this is the edition which was printed by the Punjabi University Patiala, and have a look at the thickness. I'm going to put my hand next to it. So this was based upon 1 month of Katha by Bhai Mani Singh Ji. This whole volume on Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji's life. Other than that, this book here, Gurbilas Patshay Dasmi, when Bhai Mani Singh Ji was imprisoned, I'm not going to talk too much about his martyrdom because you may have already heard of that, or you can look that up elsewhere. But when Bhai Mani Singh Ji was imprisoned by the Mughal government, even in prison, he was doing Katha of Guru Gobind Singh Ji's life. And Bhai Koir Singh, who wrote this, Gurbilas Patshay Dasmi, says, I base my information on the Katha that Bhai Mani Singh did when he was in jail. So that is the caliber of scholar that Bhai Mani Singh Ji is. Even when he's facing execution, he's still teaching about the lives of the Gurus. And there are other books which are attributed to Bhai Mani Singh Ji. So I just wanted, there's a Janam Sakhi Bhai Mani Singh Ji, which is an account of Guru Nanak Dev Ji's life, which is based upon the Katha that Bhai Mani Singh Ji performed. And this book as well, Sikhandi Bhagtan. So just getting to this book, because I only want to speak for another 15 minutes at the most. So we have, for those of you thinking, there's another 15 minutes, then I'm going to stop 10 or 15 minutes. So this book here, I know this is a whirlwind of information, but it's Sikh Heritage Month, right? Or we're celebrating it. So what do you expect? You're going to have a whirlwind of Sikh heritage. So this book here, when it begins, the Sikhs ask Bhai Mani Singh, they say, Bhai Sahib, look, we want to listen to the Katha of Bhai Gurdas Ji, a Bani. Bhai Mani Singh says, well, Bhai Gurdas Ji's Bani is so vast and we are being hunted down by the government. How can I tell you all of that? Bhai Mani Singh says, right, listen, what I will do is I will tell you, I will do the Katha of the 11th Var. So those of you who know, Bhai Gurdas Ji's Bani is separated into Vars. So let's say chapters. So the 11th chapter of Bhai Gurdas Ji's Bani, I will tell you that. And the Sikhs say, where did you learn this from? And this is what Bhai Mani Singh Ji says. This is actually a quote from Sikhandi Bhagtan. Jive Sahaba di khas rasna thi main sunaya, tiਵੇਂ मैं तुसां नू बख्यान करदा. Bhai Mani Singh Ji says, as I heard from the tongue of Guru Gobind Singh, so I am telling you. And who is writing this down? Gyani Surat Singh. So Gyani Surat Singh is the person writing this down. Again, Gyani Surat Singh was from the Gyaniya di Sampradaya, the tradition of Gyanis. So many of us are say, oh, we use the word Gyani very, very lightly. Gyani used to refer to someone who could speak different languages. So most Gyanis knew Urdu, Hindi, Sanskrit, Persian. Most Gyanis would spend 8 or 9 hours a day reading. This is the caliber of Gyanis. So like we would say PhD today, that is what Gyani used to mean. Today it has a very different meaning, but Gyani used to mean someone who knows their stuff, someone who has read the Islamic sources, Sanatan Dharma or Hindu sources. Anyway, so we had this tradition of scholarliness which was taken away from us when the British came, but I'm not going to go into that too much. So I'm going to come back to this. So you have this picture here. Bhai Mani Singh ji is doing Katha. Gyani Surat Singh is writing it down. Now, this was the caliber of people listening to Katha. They weren't just sitting there, someone drooling, someone ser piche nu sutya, whatever. People would go to the Gurdwara and they would write down what the Gyani was saying, because the Gyani was speaking such detailed stuff that you can see Surat Singh writing it down. So Bhai Mani Singh says, look, I will go through the 11th chapter of Bhai Gurdas, and he gives, this is from Sikhandi Bhagtmala, Jeha Bhai di sari bani suni da phal hove, teha is go sun wale nu phal hovega. Bhai Mani Singh ji says, by listening to the 11th chapter, it will be as if you've listened to the whole of Bhai Gurdas Ji's Bani. Why? Because in the 11th chapter, what is there? Let's go on to the next slide. So this 11th chapter of Bhai Gurdas Ji's Bani, it mentions 6 from Guru Nanak Dev Ji all the way to Guru Har Gobind Sahib. So this book here, Sikhandi Bhagtmala, it is Katha of that 11th chapter. And Sikhandi Bhagtmala has 313 Sikhs mentioned in there. And those 6, you get information not just about their lives, but the question they asked Guru Sahib. So you get their life stories and you get the questions they asked Guru Sahib. And even more important than that, you get the answers that Guru Sahib gave. So I give the numbers of the 6, 21 from Guru Nanak Dev Ji, 15 from Guru Angad Dev Ji, so on and so forth. Dr. Dharampal says that this was compiled between 1715 and 1716. Other scholars have different views, but I'm just sticking to that at the moment. And I've given you a little bit of information about Guru Bilas Pashe Shemi, Guru Bilas Pashe Dasmi, and the Janam Sakhi, so we're not going to go into that very much. So now we've heard a little bit about Bhai Mani Singh. We've heard of this scholarly tradition. Now I want to go into actually the book itself. So I think the time that we have, I'm just going to give you one story from each of the 6 Guru Sahibans. There are many in here, remember there's 313 Sikhs mentioned in this. So just one from each Guru's time period. This is a beautiful story. So the story of how Guru Nanak meets Bhai Mardana is in this book. So the first meeting of Guru Nanak and Bhai Mardana is mentioned in here. And this book becomes the foundation for Suraj Prakash, for many other books, which you hear of today. Many of them are based upon this book. This is the foundation. So the story of this is that Guru Nanak Dev Ji is sitting under a tree. Bhai Mardana Ji is roughly 10 years older than Guru Nanak Sahib. Bhai Mardana Ji comes there, starts playing the rabab. And Guru Nanak Dev Ji says to Bhai Mardana, "Hey Bhai, tu sanu raag di phali soji hai si. Je raag vich shabd malaye ke gawe tera deen duniya pala ho." Basically, Guru Nanak Dev Ji says to Bhai Mardana, you have the knowledge of music and melody. Now, if you were to sing the words of God, the Shabad, in this melody, you will be blessed in this world and the next. And there's a beautiful conversation between Guru Nanak Dev Ji and Bhai Mardana Ji in here, and how Guru Nanak Dev Ji actually names Bhai Mardana Ji Mardana, because his name before that was actually Dana. And how Guru Nanak Dev Ji names Bhai Mardana Ji is in this book. Again, I don't have time today to go into that, but I just wanted to mention that. I'll give you this because I think this is very important. How did this story is how Baba Buddha Ji met Guru Nanak Dev Ji, and this is a story which talks about how to do Simran. but I'm not going to go into that. I'll let you read it yourself. I want to go into this story. Now, 3 Sikhs, Kalu Khatri, Bhagta Ohri, and Japuvansi, they come and they ask the Guru, they say to Guru Nanak Dev Ji, what are the qualities of a Sanamukh and what are the qualities of a Manamukh? Manamukh, someone who is mind orientated, Sanamukh, someone who is divine orientated. And remember, the ways of measuring spirituality are not external. The ways of measuring spirituality are by how someone lives their life. And so let us sit here as Sikhs celebrating Sikh Heritage Month. Let us ask ourselves, which side are we going towards? Are we going towards Sanamukh, divine orientated, or mind orientated? So let's go to mind orientated first, right? So what is the first nishani? Irkha. Now, irkha, defined by Guru Nanak Dev Ji, irkha can very quickly be translated as jealousy or hatred. Now, Guru Nanak Dev Ji says, when you want to possess everything, and you can't see anyone else possess anything, when you want to have everything, that is irkha. That you want to have everything, that anything good, I must have it. That is irkha. And you burn when you see someone else having something good. That is irkha. Then you have, now let's ask ourselves, what side are we on? Where are we spiritually? Akarna is the second, let's say, characteristic of a manamukh. Akarna is when you are full of ego, you can't accept any suggestions or anything. My way is or the highway. That is akarna. Then you have ninda. When you see someone doing well and you want to try and pull them down. I'm going through this very quickly. You can read more in here. Hat. Hat is, again, when you will not give up your own ways. So akarna is about being an ego. Let's make a little differentiation. Akarna is when you're full of ego, when you can only think about yourself. And hat would be when you are not ready to accept anyone else's suggestion. So let's go on to the other side. Sanamukh, someone who is guru orientated or divine orientated. What are their characteristics? Maitri. Maitri means they look upon everyone as their friend. And that doesn't just mean, oh, you're all my friends, just saying it. Actually going out and looking upon everyone as your friend. Karuna, second. Karuna means when you see someone who has less than you, then going and helping them. Mudita, when you see someone who has something better than you, not burning with envy, but being happy for someone else. This is the hardest thing to do, I think, in life. When you see someone doing well, to actually feel happy for them. And then upekya. This is something we need to learn as well. Upekya means the fourth quality of a sanamukh or a gurmukh is when you know when to let someone make their mistakes. Instead of keep forcing someone. Sometimes you have to take a step back. That is part of being divine orientated too. So I just wanted to give you that one story from Guru Nanak Dev Ji's time. Let's go forward. I'm not going to go into Baba Buddha Ji's story, although it's fascinating. Let's go to Guru Angad Dev Ji's time. So a Sikh whose name is Bhai Kedari asks Guru Angad Dev Ji, how can I save myself from the fire of desire and anger? And Guru Angad Dev Ji says, Bhai Kedari, when the forest is on fire, what does the deer do? Bhai Kedari says it jumps into a river. Guru Angad Dev Ji says, well, that's your answer. He says, well, I don't know. What do you mean? And Guru Angad Dev Ji says, when you feel the fire of anger burning you, jump into the Sadsangat. Go and sit next to those who uplift you. And if you can't do that physically, lockdown and whatever, then this is how you do Sangat. Pick up their books, their writings, listen to their words, turn on the Kirtan, and don't just have Kirtan as, it's very good to have Kirtan playing in the background as a background noise, but it's also very good to actually sit down and connect with the Kirtan. So jump into the Sad Sangat. That is one story. This is again from Guru Angad Dev Ji's life. there's a reason for the tomato or the tomato, whatever you call it, to be there as well. I'm not going to go into this story. This is about the stages of bhakti. So I'm going to go in. This is from Guru Amar Das Ji's life. I want to give you one Guru. So Bhai Ramu, Deepa, and Ugrasen, they ask Guru Amar Das Ji, say, we're so busy all day. What can we do? How can we be saved? Guru Amar Das Ji says, have you ever seen a boat? They say, yes. Guru Amar Das Ji says, how much of the boat is above water? They say, well, probably like 70%, 80%. Only a small amount of the boat is under the water. And only a small amount of the boat is over the water, Most of it is underneath, right? Most of it is surrounded by water. Only a small amount is above the water. That got that the wrong way round. It's because this is way past my bedtime here. So Guru Amar Das Ji says, listen, just like a boat, most of it is underwater. Just a little bit keeps it floating. In the same way, take 4 kadiyan. Now, 1 kadi is 24 minutes. And Guru Amar Das Ji says, take 4 kadiyan out. So roughly, an hour and a half around that time. Take that much out in the Amrit Vela. And the Guru says, you will not drown. Just like that little amount of the boat keeps it floating. So those 4 kadiyan from your Amrit Vela will keep you, or in the early morning will keep you afloat. So I'm whizzing through this. Guru Ram Das Ji is asked, how can I live in the world but be detached? Guru Ram Das Ji says, love Gurbani like you love your business. Love Gurbani like you love making money. Love Gurbani like you love doing well in the world. That is the way you will become detached. So I'm whizzing through this. I'm sorry for that. Guru Arjan Dev Ji is asked, what is Katha, what is Kirtan? Guru Arjan Dev Ji says, and this is by Bhai Chaju, Bhai Japa, Bhai Mukanda. They say, what is Katha, what is Kirtan? Guru Arjan Dev Ji says, love is the father. Katha is the mother. Why? Because when you hear Gurbani or history being explained, like a mother washes her child, in the same way Katha washes you. And like a mother sometimes rebukes her child, in the same way, sometimes when you're listening to Katha, I remember, I think I was listening to Sant Gurbachan Singh's Katha yesterday in the car, and it shook me, because what Santji was saying was the bad things which I'm doing in my life, right? So sometimes, like a child is rebuked by its mother, in the same way Katha shakes you, right? So if love is the father, Katha is the mother. What is the child? The child is Kirtan. So when you listen to Kirtan, if you're full of love, or if you have love for the Guru and you've heard translations or you've heard explanations of that Bani, then when you listen to Kirtan of that, you have a different experience. So these are all jewels from within Sikhandi Bhagtmala. I'm going to go through, this is a really weird picture of a cat in a bucket, but there's a reason for it. I won't go through it today, but this is an interesting story. I think I'm going to finish off with this, and then we'll go into questions. So Bhai Chuhar. Now Bhai Chuhar was actually, he used to perform Katha, and he asked the Guru, he says, what is the tree of Sikhi? He asked Guru Hargobind Sahib, and Guru Hargobind Sahib says, the roots of the tree of Sikhi is humility. If you have those roots, you cannot be shaken. And then the branches of Sikhi are seva, because by doing seva, we branch out to others. Look at the organizations doing seva across the world. They've branched out beyond communities, right? Seva helps you grow. Just like the branches of a tree provide shade, seva provides shade to countless people. Then what are the leaves of Sikhi? Sadh Sangat. Just like the leaves shade you from the sunlight, in the same way, Sadh Sangat will shade you from the sunlight of desire, anger, greed. And then what is the fruit of Sikhi? The fruit of Sikhi is to recognize or understand or start living the Shabad. So this is a question asked by Bhai Chuhad and answered by Guru Hargobind Sahib Ji beautifully. There are many other stories from Guru Hargobind Sahib Ji's time, but I'm not going to go through. The 4 types of discussion, how to recognize saints, a story on ego. This is the cat story. The 4 types of guru, this one, with the candle and everything on. So I'm gonna wrap up there. This quote is from a book about Sikhandi Bhagtamala. I think I have it here somewhere on my shelf. It's one of those things that you can never find at the right time, right? But it's here somewhere. It's one of the books which this is based upon. And the author, he sums up Bhai Mani Singh Ji's life. I'll read it out. Guru Chak Bungeda. Guru Chak Bunga means Amritsar. Guru Chak Bungeda E Satara. So this star of Amritsar, ਜਦੋਂ ਅਕਾਲ ਪੁਰਖ ਤੇ ਭਾਣੇ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਟੁੱਟ ਗਿਆ, when it broke, he's talking about Bhai Mani Singh, ਵਾਰਤਕ ਆਕਾਸ਼ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਸ ਦੀ ਲਿਸ਼ਕਦੀ ਨੀਲੀ ਲੀਕ ਸਦਾ ਲਈ ਅਮਰ ਹੋ ਗਈ. In the sky of Punjabi literature, when the star of Bhai Mani Singh broke, as in Bhai Mani Singh Ji was martyred, just like a shooting star leaves behind a trail, Bhai Mani Singh Ji left a trail of literature. Sikhandi Bhagtamala, Janam Sakhi, Gurbilas Pasha Sheving, Gurbilas Pasha Dasmi, Janam Sakhi, etc., etc. So that is where I'm going to finish up for today. I just want to go on to this. So this is my list. This is my list of references for today's lecture. So Sikhandi Bhagtamala by Bhai Veer Singh, Sikhandi Bhagtamala edited by Dr. Dharmchand, whose quote I just gave. Sri Guru Gobind Singh Ji de Darbari Ratan, probably one of the most favorite books about Guru Gobind Singh Ji, which of mine. So Professor Pyara Singh, that's by Professor Pyara Singh Padam. Pramukh Sikh Shakshiyata, which is produced by the SGPC. Shaheed Balas by Kavi Seva Singh. So these are the main. There are other books which I refer to, but these are the main. So I want you to bring out your list now of those 3 books and authors. And I'm not going to make you read it out. I'm not going to do that, but I want to look at your list. And how many books have you got with authors? Think about it. And I want to give you a little list. This isn't a full list, a little list of things written but before 1900. So here we are, the next slide. All of these books, there are 14 on this one page. And this is going up to 1882. I'll read them out. Guru Shobha by Kavi Saina Ji, Ratanamal by Sahib Singh, Gurbilas Koir Singh, Binsavali Nama, Kesar Singh, Mehma Prakash, Roop Chand, Guru Ki Asakhiyan, Swaroop Singh Koshish, Gurbila Sukha Singh, Sheed Bila Seva Singh, Singh Sagar Beer Singh, Pant Prakash Ratan Singh, Gurpratap Santokh Singh, Nirnay Sagar Tara Singh, Pant Prakash Gyan Singh, Gurpad Prem Prakash, Baba Sumer Singh. So that's a list. This is not an exhaustive list. Now, why have I put this picture of Sant Ishar Singh Radewale reading? Because that is what I would like you to do after this. You are followers of Guru Granth Sahib Ji, but it is amazing how many Sikhs are afraid of reading. When I ask a Sikh, what's the last book you read? They usually say, and that's where the conversation ends. So if nothing from this Sikh Heritage Month, please go and pick up a book. You can see there are many behind me, but I would like you to try and pick up this if possible. The Punjabi is a little bit old and there isn't any English translation yet available, but that should not stop you. Just like you strive to learn other languages and other skills, let's pick up these books and let's try and read them as much as we can. So I'm going to finish up there. I haven't gone through the whole of this properly as I could have, but I think this gives you a good taste. So Sasangaji, please forgive my mistakes. I'm going to wrap up my speaking part now. I think we'll go through questions if that's okay. Sanepal Singh ji, are we all okay for that?
Anji, yes, thank you so much for that, Paji. You brought up some very interesting points here, and I think everyone can really take something away from this very inspiring katha. So let's take some questions from the audience now. And if anyone here has any questions, please type them up in the Q&A panel and we'll address them. I think we already have a few in here. So our first one is, do we find any references to Shri Dasamganth in Bhai Mani Singh Ji's writings?
Well, that's interesting because this is where I get to plug books. So this is a really good book, which has recently been published by the Sri Guru Granth Sahib Academy in Malaysia. Excellent book, excellent, just excellent. And I've actually done a video review of this, which should be out in a few days or maybe a week or so. So this book actually goes through the mentions of Dasamganth in various historical sources. So actually Sikhandi Bhagtamala, if you see here, actually mentions Dasam Bani by Mani Singh Ji's book here. And by Mani Singh Ji actually gives a savaya, Jo kach lekh likhyo bidna, soi payet misir ju sok nivaru. The Shabad inhi ki kripa ke saje hum hain, nahi mose gareeb crore pare. That is mentioned in this book, and the story is given of that particular savaya. Then a quote from Bachittar Natak is in here. The quote, Jo e bid kart tapasya payo, dwaite ek roop hoye gayo. So that is also found in Sikhandi Bhagtamala. Then you have the story of why Charitro Pakyan was written. That is found in Sikhandi Bhagtamala. By Mani Singh Ji actually explains why the Charitras were written. And you can find the references in this book. So go ahead to the Guru Granth Sahib Academy website and order the book because there's no PDF presently. And you know what? When someone writes a good book, then support them, right? You know what I mean? We're happy to spend so much on textbooks. All of you sitting there have been to university on textbooks and whatever, right? Or, you know, maybe but I'm not sure. But look how much we spend on other books. So this book, we have, you know, by Mani Singh Ji's writing, especially Sikhandi Bhagtamala, definitely mentions Dasam. And then, as I said to you before, Gurbalas Pashe Shemi is based upon Bhai Mani Singh Ji's Katha. That also mentions Dasam Granth. Duti Granth Rach Shandame Dasam Naam Nirdhar. That's a quote from Gurbalas Pashe Shemi. So yeah, this is a resource which I think all of you should grab hold of. Hanji.
Hanji, yeah, that's great. And I totally agree. You know, the books are not always very expensive. They're very accessible. So the next question here is, are there any writings by Gyani Garja Singh that you mentioned who spent 30 years on Bhai Mani Singh Ji's life?
So thank you for that question. Gyani Garja Singh, the Itihasik Khoj. This is by put together by a man called Gurmukh Singh. And so what Gurmukh Singh has done in here, Gyani Garja Singh researched Bhai Mani Singh Ji's life for about 30 years. But he didn't write very much himself. What Gyani, I have a picture here somewhere. Gyani Garja Singh, what he would actually do is he would give his research to other scholars and he would say, Tusi likh lo. So he was a very much sort of a back seat type of person, didn't want to come into the light. He was known for his blue turban, his blue dastar, and his white kurta, and that's how he would always dress. Here we are. Here the picture of Gyani Garja Singh is on the back. Just looks like your everyday uncle from, you know, one of the Gurdwara, right? That he wrote things, but he didn't write things extensively. So the book which I talked about today about Bhai Mani Singh Ji's life, which is Shaheed Balas, that was actually, it wasn't in Punjabi originally. It was in a language called Patakshari. Now Patakshari was a different language which was written by the Bhatts. Now, the Bhatts are a community of writers. And so Gyani Garja Singh was one of the people who got that translated into Gurmukhi, and then he edited it, and it's his version with his preface, which you find today. So if you go online, you'll actually be able to get the PDF of Shaheed Bilas, and you can read Gyani Garja Singh's introduction. In this book, you have Gyani Garja Singh, his historical sort of writings, which were found from his own house, and they were printed, published posthumously, so after he died. So there's like a good 20, 21 articles in here by Gyani Garja Singh. So this is a really good book to get hold of. Gyani Garja Singh di Itihasik Khoj. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Okay, and our next question here is, what is the reason why these books are not as well known? Are there any major differences in these books from the more popularized literature?
The reason why these books aren't well known is because we don't read. That's one reason, and we're lazy at reading Punjabi. And I say that with no qualms. I say that to all. I was born in England too, right? And I was born into an immigrant family and all that type of stuff. And we always say, yeah, I'm from the diaspora, immigrant families. I understand all of us have our own different circumstances, and there's no judgment upon anyone. But we as the diaspora need to start looking into these things. It's because we overlooked them. We've always thought, most of us, that the literature, education, these are Western things. We even have that today in our heads. And that is the root of the problem. Who put that into our minds? The British. Now, before the British came to Punjab, we had a over 70% literacy rate. And this is History of Indigenous Education by Lightner. That tells you, download that and read it. It's written in the 1880s. And he writes down the scholarly tradition of Punjab and how Gyanis, how knowledgeable they would be. It's not that anyone who can read Punjabi is a Gyani. No, there was a rigorous 20-year training for being a Gyani. So many of us are to blame, not just the Gyanis, but the Sangat as well. The level of prachar, or the level of information which we're taking in, what are our questions? Our questions are, what can we eat? What can we not eat? These types of things, right? When have we ever asked a Gyani, tell me what is time? What is justice? What is injustice? What is compassion? Where does it come from, right? These types of, what is the soul? Have we ever asked anyone? What is the soul? You talk about soul, what is the soul? What is the mind? These were the questions which Sikhs used to ask. So we have brought down the conversation collectively as a Panth. But that has a good point to it as well. We can also raise the conversation. Expect your Gyani to be educated. And if your Gyani is not educated, why not? That's the question you should ask the committees. Why aren't you bringing a Gyani who knows history? Why aren't you bringing a Gyani who has read these books? Why are you looking for the cheapest thing on the market? As you know, there's a saying in Punjabi, right? They say, Sasta rove var var, menga rove ek var. If you buy something cheap, you're going to cry again and again. If you buy something expensive, you'll cry only once. So we need to be asking these questions. We need to be pursuing this literary tradition. We need to be, and we are. Globally, there are young Sikhs who are taking this forward, and they're doing amazing jobs. I'm not going to name any one person, but there are many who are taking on this literary tradition. So I think most of us are to blame, to be honest, not just one person.
Okay, yeah. And so our next question here, Bhai Mani Singh Ji was chief custodian of Guru Sahib's writings. Do we have any tracing of the chain of custody of that literature afterwards?
So I'm glad you asked. So the chain which we have is, as I told you before, is called the Gyani Sampradaya, the Gyani tradition. So when you look at this tradition, I should have a lineage actually, which you can actually look at. So this is a Nitnem translation, which was printed and published by the Bhai Mani Singh Taksal, which is based in Amritsar. And it actually has a lineage starting with Bhai Mani Singh Ji Shaheed, then Bhai Diwan Singh, and you have Gyani Surat Singh, who wrote down things. He's here. Amar Singh, Ram Singh, Chanda Singh. Chanda Singh wrote some of the first translations of parts of Gurbani called Pariyai, which you can find even today handwritten. Then you have Bhai Hazara Singh, Bhai Veer Singh. This is Bhai Hazara Singh, the grandfather of Bhai Veer Singh. So Bhai Veer Singh was part of this tradition. And then you have Sant Amir Singh, Sant Kirpal Singh, Sant Surjit Singh, Sant Kartar Singh Khalsa, Sant Mohan Singh Ji Pindranwale, Sant Gurbachan Singh Ji is here. They are all custodians of this tradition. So the Gyani Sampradaya carries on to this day, and they are the ones who who are custodians of this tradition.
Okay, and we have one more question. Here's our last question we'll be taking. What is Chautha Pad referenced in Shri Guru Granth Sahib?
Okay, so this is not to do with the topic, but it's a very important question. So Chautha Pad is actually talking about Brahmagyan, so realization of the divine. So I'm not going to go too much into this question. Deserves a long answer, and it won't get that today. But to give you a very short answer, Chautha Pad is talking about self-realization, the realization of Akal Purkh Vaheguru. That is what Chautha Pad is talking about. And if you want to read more about that type of thing, there is a book which I would recommend you, which is on my shelf as well. This is one really good book, Gurmat Manovigyan by Dr. Jaswant Singh Nikki. A really good book. He was a great man. This is a great book. It gives you an introduction to the soul. I think there's even a chapter on Chautha Pad in here. I think there must be. Yes, there is. I think there's a chapter. I won't find it now because I don't want to take up your time. But I think there is a chapter about Chautha Pad in here. And it actually talks about Chautha Pad and what that is. But Chautha Pad, just to put it very simply for most of us, is realization. The realization of Akal Purkh Vaheguru. Okay, so I think that brings the questions to an end.
Okay, yeah, great. That's all the time we have today, unfortunately. But thank you so much, Faji, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to speak with us this evening.
Just before I end, I'm plugging two books today. One is this one, which is a good book. Another one is this one, which is Guru Nanak Sakhi Sagar. It's published by the Guru Nanak Academy and the Gurmat Studies Foundation. This is based on historical sources, and it's probably one of the most detailed books you'll get in English on Guru Nanak Dev Ji's life, and it's very accessible. So go ahead and grab hold of this as well. It's an excellent read. I was going through it with Sinepal yesterday, and he was amazed by what's in that book and the historical detail. So that's enough of. I'm not getting any commissions, by the way, for any of this. Those of you who think they want a side business, this is just appreciating the scholarly tradition in the Panth. And there are other books as well. I mean, another book which is in English, which I think that you should all try and get hold of, is this one. This is Sri Nanak Prakash translation, translated by Resham Singh and Jeevan Pal Singh, fellow Englandese. Again, no commission or anything. It's a beautiful translation of the beginning chapters of Nanak Prakash by Kavi Santokh Singh. So, these things are becoming available in English, but that doesn't give us an excuse not to learn Punjabi. So please forgive my mistakes, Sal Sangat ji. That's all from me. Vaheguru ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru ji ki Fateh.
Yes, and everyone, the book is available online. It's only about $25. We can drop a link in the chat. I ask that everyone please stick around for a little bit as we have Bhai Hardeep Singh Khalsa to do a melodic recitation of Shri Rehra Sahib. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Sri Vaheguru Sahib Ji, Har Jug Jug Bhagat Upaya, Pej Rakhda Aya Ram Raje, Har Nakas Dust Har Marya, Prahlad Taraya, ਅਹੰਕਾਰੀਆਂ ਨਿੰਦਕਾਂ ਪਿੱਠ ਦੇ ਨਾਮ ਦਿਓ ਮੁਖ ਲਾਇਆ ਜਨ ਨਾਨਕ ਐਸਾ ਹਰ ਸੇਵਿਆ ਅੰਤ ਲਏ ਚੁਰਾਇਆ ਇੱਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤਿਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦ ਸਲੋਕ ਮਹੱਲਾ ਪਹਿਲਾ ਦੁਖ ਦਾਰੂ ਸੁਖ ਰੋਗ ਭਇਆ ਜਾ ਸੁਖ ਤਾਮ ਨਾ ਹੋਈ ਤੂੰ ਕਰਤਾ ਕਰਣਾ ਮੈਂ ਨਾਹੀ ਜਾਹੋ ਕਰੀ ਨਾ ਹੋਈ ਬਲਿਹਾਰੀ ਕੁਦਰਤ ਵਸਿਆ ਤੇਰਾ ਅੰਤ ਨ ਜਾਈ ਲਖਿਆ ਰਹਾਉ ਜਾਤ ਮਹਿ ਜੋਤ ਜੋਤ ਮਹਿ ਜਾਤਾ ਅਕਲ ਕਲਾ ਭਰਪੂਰ ਰਹਿਆ ਤੂੰ ਸੱਚਾ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਸਿਫਤ ਸਵਾਲਿਓ ਜਿਨ ਕੀਤੀ ਸੋ ਪਾਰ ਪਿਆ ਕਹੋ ਨਾਨਕ ਕਰਤੇ ਕੀਆਂ ਬਾਤਾਂ ਜੋ ਕਿਛ ਕਰਨਾ ਸੋ ਕਰ ਰਹਿਆ ਸੋ ਦਰ ਰਾਗ ਆਸਾ ਮਹੱਲਾ ਪਹਿਲਾ ਇੱਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤਿਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦ ਸੋ ਦਰ ਤੇਰਾ ਕਿਹਾ ਸੋ ਘਰ ਕਿਹਾ ਜਿਤ ਬਹਿ ਸਰਬ ਸਮਾਲੇ ਵਾਜੇ ਤੇਰੇ ਨਾਦ ਅਨੇਕ ਅਸੰਖਾ ਕੇਤੇ ਤੇਰੇ ਵਾਵਣ ਹਾਰੇ ਕੇਤੇ ਤੇਰੇ ਰਾਗ ਪਰੀ ਸਿਉ ਕਹੀਏ ਕੇਤੇ ਤੇਰੇ ਗਾਵਣ ਹਾਰੇ ਗਾਵਨੇ ਤੁਧਨੋ ਪਾਵਣ ਪਾਣੀ ਬੈਸੰਤਰ ਗਾਵੇ ਰਾਜਾ ਧਰਮ ਦੁਆਰੇ ਗਾਵਨ ਤੁਧਨੋ ਚਿਤ ਗੁਪਤ ਲਿਖ ਜਾਣਨ ਲਿਖ ਲਿਖ ਧਰਮ ਵਿਚਾਰੇ ਗਾਵਨ ਤੁਧਨੋ ਈਸਰ ਬ੍ਰਹਮਾ ਦੇਵੀ ਸੋਹਨ ਤੇਰੇ ਸਦਾ ਸਵਾਰੇ ਗਾਵਨ ਤੁਧਨੋ ਇੰਦਰ ਇੰਦਰਾਸਣ ਬੈਠੇ ਦੇਵਤਿਆਂ ਦਰ ਨਾਲੇ ਗਾਵਨ ਤੁਧਨੋ ਸਿੱਧ ਸਮਾਧੀ ਅੰਦਰ ਗਾਵਨ ਤੁਧਨੋ ਸਾਧ ਵਿਚਾਰੇ ਗਾਵਨ ਤੁਧਨੋ ਜਤੀ ਸਤੀ ਸੰਤੋਖੀ ਗਾਵਨ ਤੁਧਨੋ ਵੀਰ ਕਰਾਰੇ ਗਾਵਨ ਤੁਧਨੋ ਪੰਡਤ ਪੜਨ ਰਖੀ ਸੁਰ ਜੁਗ ਜੁਗ ਵੇਦਾ ਨਾਲੇ ਗਾਵਨ ਤੁਧਨੋ ਮੋਹਣੀਆਂ ਮਨ ਮੋਹਨ ਸੁਰਗ ਮਛ ਪਿਆਲੇ ਗਾਵਨ ਤੁਧਨੋ ਰਤਨ ਉਪਾਏ ਤੇਰੇ 68 ਤੀਰਥ ਨਾਲੇ ਗਾਵਨ ਤੁਧਨੋ ਜੋਧ ਮਹਾਬਲ ਸੂਰਾ ਗਾਵਨ ਤੁਧਨੋ ਖਾਣੀ ਚਾਰੇ ਗਾਵਨ ਤੁਧਨੋ ਖੰਡ ਮੰਡਲ ਬ੍ਰਹਮੰਡਾ ਕਰ ਕਰ ਰੱਖੇ ਤੇਰੇ ਤਾਰੇ ਸਈ ਤੁਧਨੋ ਗਾਵਨ ਜੋ ਤੁਧ ਭਾਵਨ ਰਤੇ ਤੇਰੇ ਭਗਤ ਰਸਾਲੇ ਹੋਰ ਕੇਤੇ ਤੁਧਨੋ ਗਾਵਨ से मैं चित न आवन, नानक क्या विचारे। सोई सोई सता सच साहिब, साचा साची नाई। है पी होसी जाए न जासी, रचना जिन रचाई। रंगी रंगी भांति कर कर जिनसी, माया जिन उपाई। कर कर देखे कीता अपना, ज्यो तिस दी वड्याई। जो तिस भावै सोई करसी, फिर हुक्म न करना जाय। सो पात साहो साहा पत साहिब, नानक रहन रजाई। आसा महला पहला, सुन बड़ा आखे सब कोय। केवड वडा डीठा होय, कीमत पाए न कहया जाए। कहने वाले तेरे रहे समाए। वड्डे मेरे साहिबा, गहर गंभीरा गुणी गहीरा। कोई न जाने तेरा कहता, केवड चीरा रहाओ। सब सुरती मिल सुरत कमाई, सब कीमत मिल कीमत पाई। ज्ञानी त्यानी गुर गुरहाई, कहन न जाई तेरी तिल वड्याई। सब सत सब तप सब चंगियाइयां, सिद्धा पुरखा किया वड्याइयां। तुद बिन सिद्धि किनै न पाया, कर्म मिलै नाही ठाक रहाया। आखण वाला क्या बेचारा, सिफती परे तेरे भंडारा। जिस तू दे तिसै क्या चारा, नानक सच सवारण हारा। आसा महला पहला, आखा जीवा बिसरे मर जाओ। आखण औखा साचा नाम, साचे नाम की लागे भूख। उत भूखे खाए चलिए दुख, सो क्यों बिसरे मेरी माय। साचा साहिब साचे नाय रहाओ। साचे नाम की तिल वड्याई, आख थके कीमत नहीं पाई। जे सब मिल के आखण पाए, वड्डा न होवे काट न जाए। ना ओह मरे न होवे सोग, देदा रहे न चुके भोग। गुण एहो होर नाही कोय, ना को होआ ना को होय। जे वड आप ते वड तेरी दात, जिन दिन करके कीती रात। खसम विसारे ते कम जात, नानक नावे बाज सनात। राग गुजरी महला चौथा, हर के जन सतगुर सतपुरखा। बिनो करो गुर पास, हम कीरे किरम सतगुर सरनाई। कर दया नाम परगास, मेरे मीत गुरुदेव मोको राम नाम परगास। गुरमत नाम मेरा प्राण सखाई, हर कीरत हमारी रह रास। रहाओ हर जन के वड भाग वडेरे, जिन हर हर सरदा हर प्यास। हर हर नाम मिले त्रिपतास है, मिल संगत गुण परगास। जिन हर 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 रस नाम न पाया, ते भागहीन जम पास। जो सतगुर शरण संगत नहीं आए, त्रिग जीवै त्रिग जीवास। जिन हर जन सतगुर संगत पाई, तिन तुर मस्तक लिखिया लखास। तन तन सत संगत जित हर रस पाया, मिल जन नानक नाम परगास। राग गुजरी महला पंजवा, काहे रे मन चित वह उदम, जा आहर हर जियो परया। सैल पत्थर मह जानते उपाए, ताका रिजक आगे कर तरया। मेरे माधो जी सतसंगत मिले सुतरिया, गुर प्रसाद परम पद पाया, सूके कासट हरया। रहाओ जनन पिता लोक सुत बनता, कोय न किसकी तरया। सिर सिर रिजक संभाहे ठाकुर, काहे मन पाओ करया। ऊडे ऊडे आवे से कोसा, तिसु पाछे बचरे छरया। तिन कवन खलावे कवन चुगावे, मन मह सिमरन करया। सब निदान दस असठ सिदान, ठाकुर कर तल तरया। जन नानक बल बल सद बल जाइए, तेरा अंत न पारा वरया। राग आसा महला चौथा, सो पुरख एक ओंकार, सतगुर प्रसाद। सो पुरख निरंजन हर पुरख निरंजन, हरे अगम अगम अपारा। सब त्यावह सब त्यावह तुद जी, हर सच्चे सिरजनहारा। सब जी तुम्हारे जी, तुम जिया का दातारा। हर त्यावह संत हो जी, सब दुख विसारण हारा। हरे आपे ठाकुर हरे आपे सेवक जी, या नानक जंत विचारा। तू घट घट अंतर सर्व निरंतर जी, हर एको पुरख समाना। एक दाते एक पेखारी जी, सब तेरे चोज बिड़ाना। तू आपे दाता आपे भुगता जी, हौ तुद बिन अवर न जाना। तू पार ब्रह्म बेअंत बेअंत जी, तेरे क्या गुण आँख वखाना। जो सेवहे तुद जी, जन नानक तिन कुर्बाना। हर त्यावह हर ते आवह तुद जी, से जन जुग मह सुखवासी। से मुक्त पए, जिन हर ते आया जी, तिन टूटी जम की पासी। जिन जिन हर निरपौ ते आया जी, तिन का पौ सब गवासी। जिन सेविया मेरा हर जी, ते हर हर रूप समासी। से तन जिन हर ते आया जी, जन नानक तिन बल जासी। तेरी भगत भंडार जी, परे बेअंता। तेरे भगत सलाहन तुध जी, हरे अनक अनेक अनंता। तेरी अनक करहे हर पूजा जी, तप है जप है बेअंता। तेरे अनेक पढ़े बहु सिमरत सासत जी, कर क्रिया खट कर्म करंता। से भगत भले जन नानक जी, जो पावे है मेरे हर भगवंता। तू आद पुरख अपरंपर करता जी, तुद जे वड अवर न कोई। तू जुग जुग एको सदा सदा, तू एको जी, तू नह चल करता सोई। तुद आपे पावे सोई वरते जी, तू आपे करे सोई। तुद आपे सृष्ट सब उपाई जी, तुद आपे सिरज सब गोई। जन नानक गुण गावे करते के जी, जो सब से का जानोई। आसा महला चौथा, तू करता सचयार मैडा साई। जो तो पावे सोई थीसी, जो तू दे सोई हो पाई। रहाओ सब तेरी तू सबनी ते आया, जिसनो कृपा करहे तिन नाम रतन पाया। गुरमुख लादा मन मुख गवाया, तुद आप विछोड़या आप मिलाया। तू दरियाओ सब तुझ ही माहे, तुझ बिन दूजा कोई नाहे। जिय जंत सब तेरा खेल, विजोग मिल बिछुड़िया संजोगी मेल। जिसनो तू जाना है सोई जन जाने, हर गुण सद ही आख वखाणे। जिन हर सेवया तिन सुख पाया, सहजे ही हर नाम समाया। तू आपे करता तेरा किया सब होए, तुद बिन दूजा अवर न कोय। तू कर कर वेखे जान है सोए, जन नानक गुरमुख परगट होए। आसा महला पहला, तित सरवरड़े पहले निवासा। पानी पावक तिन्हें किया, पंख जो मोह पग नहीं चाले। हम देखा तेह डूबियाले, मन एक नचे तिस मूड़ मना। हर बिसरत तेरे गुण गलिया रहाओ। ना हो जती सती नहीं पढ़िया, मूर्ख मुगदा जन्म पहया। प्रणवत नानक तिनकी सरना, जिन तू नाही विसरिया। आसा महला पंजवा, पई परापत मानुख दे हुरिया। गोबिंद मिलन की एह तेरी बरिया, अबर काज तेरे किते नाकाम। मिल साध संगत भज केवल नाम। सरंजाम लाग भव जल तरन कै, जन्म वृथा जात रंग माया कै रहाओ। जप तप संजम धर्म न कमाया, सेवा साध न जानिया हर राया। कहो नानक हम नीच करम्मा, शरण परे की राखो शर्मा। जप तप संजम धर्म न कमाया, सेवा साध न जानिया हर राया। कहो नानक हम नीच करम्मा, शरण परे की राखो शर्मा। एक ओंकार। श्री वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह। पातशाही दसवीं चौपाई। पुनराक्षस का काटा सीसा, श्री असकेत जगत के ईसा। पोहपन पृष्ठ गगन ते पही, सब हिन आन बधाई दई। तन तन लोगन के राजा, दुष्टन दाह गरीब निवाजा। अखिल पवन के सिरजन हारे, दास जान मोहिले हो वारे। कभयो बाच बेनती चौपाई, हमरी करो हाथ ते रक्षा। पूर्ण होए चित्त की इच्छा, तब चरणन मन रहे हमारा। अपना जान करो प्रतपारा, हमरे दुष्ट सभे तुम काबहो। आप हाथ दे मोहे बचावहो, सुखी बसे मोरो परवारा। सेवक सिख सबे करतारा, मोर अच्छा निज कर दे करिए। सब बैरन को आज संगरिए, पूर्ण होए हमारी आशा। तोर भजन की रहे प्यासा, तुम्हें चार कोई अवर न त्याऊं। जो बर चाहूं सो तुम ते पाऊं। सेवक सिख हमारे तारिय है, चुन चुन सतर हमारे मारिय है। आप हाथ दे मुझे उबरिए, मरण काल का त्रास निवरिय। हु जो सदा हमारे पच्छा, श्री अस तुझ जू करियो रक्षा। राख ले हो मोहे राखन हारे, साहेब संत सहाय प्यारे। दीन बंद दुष्टन के हंता, तुम हो पुरी चतुर्दश कंता। काल पाए ब्रह्मा बपतरा, काल पाए शिव जू अवतरा। काल पाए कर विष्णु प्रकाशा, सकल काल का किया तमाशा। जबन काल जोगी शिव कियो, वेद राज ब्रह्मा जू थियो। जबन काल सब लोक सवारा, नमस्कार है ताहे हमारा। जबन काल सब जगत बनायो, देव दैत जिच्छन उपजायो। आदि अंत एक अवतारा, सोई गुरु समझियो हमारा। नमस्कार तिस ही को हमारी, सकल प्रजा जिन्हें आप सवारी। सेवकन को सब गुण सुख दियो, शत्रुन को पल मोह बद कियो। कट कट के अंतर की जानत, भले बुरे की पीर पछानत। चीटी ते कुंचुर यस थूला, सब पर कृपा दृष्ट कर फूला। संतन दुख पाए ते दुखी, सुख पाए साधन के सुखी। एक एक की पीर पछाने, काट काट के पट पट की जाने। जब युद्ध करख करा कर तारा, प्रजा तरत तब देह अपारा। जब या करख करत हो कब हूँ, तुम मैं मिलत देह तर सब हूँ। जेते बदन सृष्ट सब तारे, आप आपनी बूझ उचारे। तुम सब ही ते रहत नरालम, जानत भेद भेद हर आलम। निरंकार निर्बकार निर्लंब, आदि अनिल अनादि असंभ। ताका मूढ़ हो चारत पैदा, जाको पैव न पावत बेदा। ताको कर पाहन अनुमानत, महामूढ़ कछु भेद न जानत। महादेव को कहत सदा शिव, निरंकार का चीनत नह पह। आप आपने बुध है जेती, बरनत भिन्न भिन्न तोह तैती। तुमरा लखा न जाए पसारा, कह बिद सजा प्रथम संसारा। एके रूप अनूप स्वरूपा, रंग पयो राव के भूपा। अंडज जेरज से तज किन्नी, उत्पुज खान बहोर रज दीनी। कहूँ फूल राजा है बैठा, कहूँ समट पयो शंकर अकैठा। सिगरी सृष्टि दिखाए चंपव, आद जुगाद स्वरूप स्वयंपव। अब रक्षा मेरी तुम करो, सिख्यो बार असिख संघरो। दुष्ट चिते उठवाते उत्पाता, सकल मलेच करो रणगाता। जे अस तुझ तब सरनी परे, तिनके दुष्ट दुष्ट होए मरे। पुरख जवन पग परे तिहारे, तिनके तुम संकट सब टारे। जो कल को एक बार ते है, ताके काल निकट नह है। रक्षा होए ताहे सब काला, दुष्ट अरिष्ट टरे तत्काला। कृपा दृष्ट तन जाहे निहरे हो, ताके ताप तनक मह हरे हो। रिद्ध सिद्ध कर्मों सब होई, दुष्ट शाशु सके न कोई। एक बार जिन तुम्हें संबारा, काल फासते ताहे उबारा। जिन नर नाम तिहारो कहा, दारिद दुष्ट दुख ते रहा। खड़ग केत में शरण तिहारी, आप हाथ दे लेहो उबारी। सर्व ठौर मोह हो सहाय, दुष्ट दुख ते लेहो बचाए। कृपा करी हम पर जग माता, ग्रंथ करा पूरन सुगराता। किल बिख सकल देह को हरता, दुष्ट दोखियन को क्षय करता। श्री अस तुझ जब पहे दयाला, पूरन करा ग्रंथ तत्काला। मन बांछत फल पावे सोई, दुखन तिसे व्यापत कोई। आड़िल सुने गुंग जो यह सुरस ना पावै। सुने मूढ़ चित लाए चतुरता आवै। दुख दर्द पो निकट न तिन नर के रहे। हो जो या की एक बार, चौपई को कहे चौपई। संबत 17 सहस पणिजय, अर्ध सहस फुन 3 कहिजय। भाद्रव सुदी अष्टमी रविवारा, तीर सतद्रव ग्रंथ सुधारा। एत श्री चरित्रो पख्याने, त्रिया चरित्र मंत्री भूप संवादे। 405 चरित्र समापत, मस्त सुग मस्त आफजू दोहरा। दास जान कर दास पर, की जय कृपा अपार। आप हाथ दे राख मोहे, मन क्रम बचन विचार। चौपई मैं नगन सह प्रथम मनाऊं, किसन बिसन कबहू नह त्याऊं। कान सुने पहचान न तिन सो, लिव लागी मोरी पगे न सो। महाकाल रखवार हमारो, महालोह मैं किंकर थारो। अपना जान करो रखवार, बाएंगे की लाज विचार। अपना जान मुझे प्रत परिय, चुन चुन सत्र हमारे मरिय। देग तेग जग में दो चले, राख आप मोहे और न दले। तुम मम करहो सदा व्रत पारा, तुम साहिब मैं दास तिहारा। जाने आपना मुझे निवाज, आप करो हमारे सब काज। तुम हो सब राजन के राजा, आपे आप गरीब निवाजा। दास जान कर कृपा कर हो मोहे, हार परा में आन द्वार तो है। अपना जान करो प्रतपारा, तुम साहिब मैं किंकर थारा। दास जान दे हाथ उबारो, हमरे सब बैरियन संगारो। प्रथम तरो भगवत को त्याना, बहुर करो कविता बिदनाना। कृष्ण जथा मत चरित्र उचारो, चूक होए कबले हो सुधारो। कबियो बाच दोहरा, जो निज प्रभु सो कहा, सो कहो जग माहे। जो तह प्रभ को ते आए हैं, अंत स्वर्ग को जाए। दोहरा, हरे हरे जन दो एक है, बेब विचार कछना है। जल ते उपज तरंग जियो, जल ही बिखे समाए। दोहरा, जब आयस प्रभ को पयो, जन्म तरा जग आए। अब मैं कथा संक्षेप ते, सब हूँ कहत सुनाए। कब बाच दोहरा, ठाड़ पयो मैं जोर कर, बचन कहाँ सिर न्याय। पंथ चले तब जगत में, जब तुम करहो सहाय। दोहरा, जे तुमरे त्यान को, नित उठती हैं संत। अंत लहेंगे मुक्त फल, पावेंगे भगवंत। दोहरा, काल पुरख की देह मोह, कोटक बिसन महेश। कोट इंद्र ब्रह्मा किते, रव सस करोर जलेस। दोहरा, राम कथा जुग जुग अटल, सब कोई पाखत नेत। सुर्गवास रघुबर करा, सगरी पुरी समेत। चौपई, जो यह कथा सुने और गावे, दुख पाप तह निकट न आवे। बिसन भगत की ए फल होई, आद व्याध छुए सके न कोई। सम्मत 17 सहस 55, हाड़वदी प्रथम सुख दावन। त्वय प्रसाद कर ग्रंथ सुधारा, पूल परी लहो लेहो सुधारा। दोहरा, नेत्र तुमके चरण तर, सतुद्रव तीर तरंग। श्री भगवत पूरन कियो, रघुबर कथा प्रसंग। दोहरा, साध असाध जानो नहीं, बाद सुबाद विवाद। ग्रंथ सकल पूरण कियो, भगवत कृपा प्रसाद। सोइया पाएंगे जब ते तुमरे, तब ते कहो आँख तरे नहीं आन्यो। राम रहीम पुराण कुरान, अनेक कहे मत एक न मान्यो। सिमरत शास्त्र वेद सबे, बहु भेद कहे हम एक न जान्यो। श्री अस पान कृपा तुमरी कर, मैं न कहयो सब तोहे बखान्यो। दोहरा सगल द्वार को छाट के गहयो तुहारो द्वार। बाहेंगे की लाज अस गोबिंद दास तुहार। सगल द्वार को छाट के गहयो तुहारो द्वार। बाहेंगे की लाज अस गोबिंद दास तुहार। राम कली महला तीजा आनंद। एक ओंकार सतगुर प्रसाद। आनंद पया मेरी माए सतगुरु मैं पाया। सतगुर ता पाया सहज सेती मन वजियां वादाया। राग रतन परवार परिया शब्द गावण आया। शब्दो तगावो हरि केरा मन जिनी वसाया। कहे नानक आनंद हुआ सतगुरु मैं पाया। ए मन मेरेया तू सदा रहो हर नाले। हर नाल रहो तू मन मेरे दुख सब विसारना। अंगीकार ओह करे तेरा कारज सब सवारना। सबना गला समरथ स्वामी सो क्यों मन हो विसारे। कहे नानक मन मेरे सदा रहो हर नाले। साचे साहेबा क्या नाही कर तेरे करता तेरे सब किछ है। जिस दह सो पावे सदा सिफत सलाह तेरी नाम मन वसावे। नाम जिन कै मन वसया वाजे शब्द कन्हेरे। कहे नानक सच्चे साहिब क्या नाही तर तेरे। साचा नाम मेरा आधारो साच नाम आधार मेरा। जिन भुखा सब गवाइया कर शांत सुख मन आए वसया। जिन इच्छा सब पुजाइया सदा कुर्बान कीता गुरु विठहो। जिस दी आए है वड्याइया कहे नानक सुनहो संत हो शब्द तरहो प्यारो। साचा नाम मेरा आधारो। वाजे पंच शब्द तित कर सुभागे। कर सुभागे शब्द वाजे कला जित कर तारिया। पंच दूत तुद वस कीते काल कंटक मारिया। तुर कर्म पाया तुद जिन को सिनाम हर के लागे। कहे नानक तेह सुख होआ तित कर अनहद वाजे। अनद सुनो वड भागी हो सगल मनोरथ पूरे। पार ब्रह्म प्रभ पाया उतरे सगल बिसूरे। दुख रोग संताप उतरे सुनी सच्ची बाणी। संत साजन पए सर से पूरे गुर ते जानी। सुनते पुनीत कहते पवित सतगुर रहया भरपूरे। बिनवंत नानक गुर चरण लागे वाजे अनहद तूरे। सुनते पुनीत कहते पवित सतगुर रहया भरपूरे। बिनवंत नानक गुर चरण लागे वाजे अनहद तूरे। मुंदावणी महला पंजवा थाल विच तिन वस्तु पयो। सत संतोख विचारो अमृत नाम ठाकुर का पयो, जिसका सबस आधारो। जे को खावे जे को पुंचै, तिसका होए उधारो। एह वसत तजी नह जाई, नित नित रख उर तारो। तम संसार चरण लग तरिए, सब नानक ब्रह्म पसारो। सलोक महला पंजवा, तेरा कीता जातो नाही, मैनो जोग की तोई। मैं निर्गुण आरे को गुण नाही, आपे तरस पयोई। तरस पया मेहरामत होई, सतगुर सजन मिलया। नानक नाम मिले तां जीवा, तन मन थीवे हरिया। तरस पया मेहरामत होई, सतगुर सजन मिलया। नानक नाम मिले तां जीवा, तन मन थीवे हरिया। पौड़ी तिथे तू समरथ, जिथे कोई नाहे, ओथे तेरी रख अग्नि उदर माए। सुन के जम के दूत, नाए तेरे छड़ जाए। पहो जल बिखम असगाह, गुर सबदी पार पाए। जिनको लगी प्यास, अमृत से खाए। कल मह एहो पुन, गुण गोविंद गाए। सबसे नो कृपाल, संभाले साहे साहे। बिरथा कोई न जाए, जे आवे तुद आहे। सलोक महला पंजवा, अंतर गुर आराधना, जिहवा जप गुर नाम। नेतरी सतगुर पैखणा, श्रवणी सुनना गुर नाम। सतगुर से तीरत्या, दरगह पाइए ठाव। कहो नानक किरपा करे, जिसनु एह वत ते। जग मह उत्तम काढ़िया है, बिरले कई के। महला पंजवा, रखे रखण हार, आप उबारियन। गुर की पैरी पाए, काज सवारियन। हुआ आप दयाल, मन होना विसारियन। साध जना के संग, पव जल तारियन। साखत निंदक दुष्ट, खिन माहे बेदारियन। तिस साहिब की टेक, नानक मने माहे। जिस सिमरत सुख होए, सगले दुख जाए। तिस साहिब की टेक, नानक मने माहे। जिस सिमरत सुख होए, सगले दुख जाए। वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा, वाहिगुरु।